Yard open. Yard is open. Yard open, yard is open. So I've been getting a lot of questions. People have been asking me, what do you mean by yard open? So in prison, as y'all know, I did 17 years, 7 months, 17 days. Officers will come on the microphone and announce the rec yard is open. Yard open, yard is open. If you are not a working daytime houseman, you better get out of the dorm or you will receive disciplinary action. You have 5 minutes, I repeat 5 minutes, to get out of the dorm. Yard open, yard is open. So when the yard opens, that's the closest thing we have to freedom. That's it. You get off your bunk, you're out the dorm, you can move around. In Florida prisons, we're outside, and everything other than women that's involved in street life is out on the rec yard. Guys are out there gambling. You got poker games, you got card games, skin games, people playing tonk, people playing spades, sports, basketball, football, softball. Yes, softball. And the camps I've been at, they play softball with softball bats. And yes, I have seen things get crazy on the yard with the softball bats. But anyway, and with horseshoes. Crazy. It's been 7 years since I've been out. And it's crazy how I still feel the effects. It's like the wonder of the world is I'm still amazed by it. For instance, I could be out and about and it's just the small things, I could be sitting back, I could be driving or whatever, and I see the sun setting and I see the clouds and I just be like, wow, this is amazing. This sunset may never look like this ever again. It's not may never, it'll never look like this again. And I've even pulled over just to sit and admire a sunset. Or I could be in the car, pull up to the house, in the truck, pull up to the house and just listen to the sound of rain on the roof. Or I might just want to take a little stroll and, like a kid, splash through the puddles, It's crazy how profound and how amazing, everyday life can be. We take advantage of just, it seems like trivial stuff. So that's one thing that suffering has taught me. It's to just, because you never know when it's going to end. It all ends at some point. But life is good. That's my saying right now. Life is good and getting better. But back to life on the yard. It's kind of. So another thing, with the mental health thing, it's a real popular thing. I have a younger brother and his mother. A lot of times they both like to reflect on the mental aspect, the potential PTSD after doing 17 years in there, right? Because you got to think, people go off to war, they be in Iraq and Afghanistan, for a comparatively short amount of times and come back with PTSD, the amount of violence, that you're constantly surrounded by in prison. It also almost seems,
expected to have some type of PTSD. So how is this manifesting in my life? And the truth is, like, I really don't know. I think about it often enough because the subject comes up, and, in my mind, I feel like I deal with stress really well. I deal with pressure situations, I think, relatively well. Like, I keep my cool. I don't panic, like I've done since I've been out. Like, I've done like club security. So, it could be violence in that aspect too, and so, like, I really don't know. Like, you would think it has to be there some kind of way. But like I said, I haven't seen it yet. Or I don't recognize it. So prison is a very dark, dismal, miserable place. So how do you keep your sanity in such a place, right? Because the darkness and the misery is self-perpetuating. The inmates do it, the officers do it. It's just like, you could go in there, even if you have like a positive mind state, like, you got to be strong, because it's like the grind of it all is constant. It's constant pressure. And you can see, some people try and be upbeat, and that's like a magnet to the people who harbor that darkness inside of them. Because they're miserable, they say misery love company. Now they're coming to try and crush your happiness, try and steal the bit of joy that you have, whatever it is. And it could be psychological, it could be physical. They might just, constantly bombard you with negative thoughts, regardless of how much time you have. You can have, a few months left. People put negative thoughts in your head. You could have a lifetime to do. People like, oh, you're never getting out. Your family's gonna, they're with you right now. They love you now, but they're gonna abandon you. Those are just some examples of psychologically or physically. They could just see you a happy person. Yeah, I don't like him. They're gonna start fucking with you. You know what I'm saying? They're gonna test you. Your family showing love for you. You get money. They're gonna try and take your canteen from you. They're gonna pick fights with you. They're gonna start shit with you. Like, for no reason. So I remember I was at Sumter one time. And so Sumter is open bay dorms, almost the whole compound. So I'm in an open bay dorm, and it's a couple guys in there who've been in prison forever. I remember it's one old school cat from Tampa. I can't remember his name. Excellent chess player. And there was this other guy, I think we called him like Hucklebuck, something like that. Hucklebucks was from like South Florida, like Miami somewhere. And, officers come around, they count, so we got to be quiet. But once they count, they go back in the officer station. As long as we're not too loud, they're not really messing with us. So Hucklebuck and old school from Tampa, man, they're straight comedians. They're laughing, keeping the energy good in the dorm. And I remember asking, I think it was old school from Tampa, because he was on death row, as a matter of fact, one point. He was on death row for a long time. Then he got the death sentence overturned, but now he has a life sentence. At the time, this is maybe like 2006, 2007. He's been in prison about 30 years already. And I'm like, man, you've been in prison all this time, you still got a life sentence. Like, why are you still so happy? Why is there still so much joy inside of you? And he was like, man, listen, man, you can never let these motherfuckers steal your joy. That's real, bro. I feel that. You know what I'm saying? That's that inner fire. But you got to feed that inner fire. And it helps when you come across other people who have that positive inner fire, that constant flame inside of them. because that darkness eat that flame alive. That inner fire got to be strong. So one of the things that I was doing, you wanna have a circle, people who you might go to for different things. Some people, like I was into sports, so I got my sports circle. But then I have like guys that are intellectually stimulating as well. And oftentimes, this circle doesn't do well with that circle. Like, we keep them apart because most of the time the intellectuals aren't as respected because they're not physically dominant specimens. You know what I'm saying? And anytime people see weakness, then predators gonna bounce on that shit. But anyway, so it was kind of like the law of attraction, like the universal law of attraction. Like it was some things that I was interested in looking into. So one of the things I was fascinated by was religion. So I was like, people are willing to die for religion. What is it about religion that people are so fascinated about? What is it that has this control over people to this aspect that because, their leader says this, you're willing to basically like exterminate this tribe right here and vice versa. It could be different sects of the same religion. It's like, oh, well, this one says this one says that. We don't see eye to eye. Boom, my God is better than your God. And that's wild, to have that type of effect over people. So one of the things early on in prison I was doing was studying religion. Because going in, I ain't gonna lie, like a lot of other people, I tried to pray my way right out of the county jail. I was like, shoot, I got a good chance, because legally my case wasn't, that solid. So I was like, maybe I can pray my way right out of jail. That ain't work. So, like, I was just fascinated. So, by me having this thought in my mind, it's like it drew all these different people to me. So some of these guys got books that are outlawed in prison. It's a lot of, prison doesn't want you with information. You can read books on bullshit, but if they feel like this is a threat to what they're trying to do, to the institutionalizing that they're trying to do how they're trying to institutionalize your brain, you can't get it. And some of these books were religious books, but at the same time, just like you can get drugs and cell phones in there, if you want a certain type of book, where there's a will, there's a way. And I came across people who had these books. So I would read up on whether it be Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. Those are the big ones in Judaism. And it's amazing how, when you look back into the history of these things, just how similar they are and how people try and use these things to manipulate the minds of people. So I was fascinated about that. And also that was a thing in prison too, how like people will use religion to try and get, like other inmates would use religion trying to gain power over other inmates. They put themselves in positions of authority, and it depends. Some people just want some type of authority. Some people want some type of power, but some of these guys were sexual predators. And I used to always wonder, it was always the Christian guys. I would always wonder, I'm like, how do you go from teaching about Christianity to like homosexual sex? Like, how are they doing this? You can see them. I know the old school booty bandits, they got a look. They might be out on the rec yard. It seems like they sitting Indian style off in the back corner of the softball field, got the Bibles open. Before you know it, you got them bent over in the chapel somewhere. And that's another thing, right? So when I first get to prison, I'm at Okaloosa. 19, maybe about to turn 20. One of the guys was like, "Hey man, let's go up to church." Like, I don't really know, really, maybe, a good church service will do you some good. Like, all right, let's go to church. I go up to church. And man, it was, so a lot of homosexuals that's the time when they would go meet up with their lovers. Their lovers, they might not be housed in the same dorm, so they can't be together at the same time. So man, I'm sitting up in here, and it's Sodom and Gomorrah. You got this guy, he's up on stage, he preaching the word, but back here in the pews, he tonguing this one down, he getting some head right here. They creeping off in the bathroom. I'm like, yeah, nah, never again. Never again. So let's get back on track. Let's get back on the subject of yard open, right? So for me, when the yard is open, in the first part of my bed, that's either I'm going to the law library to try and study to get my case overturned, or I'm going out there to play basketball, right? Later on in my bed, after I stopped playing basketball, once I realized, they're not letting you go. There's no sense of training to go to the NBA or the NFL. You ain't doing none of that. So I started working out. So that's something that I want to incorporate also in Yard Open. The yard is open. Me and my boys, we get together, and get our workout in. They might work out with me, they might not. Kind of the same thing out here in the real world. I try and get a workout together. Some of the fellas or some of the girls, we might get together. If not, but I'm determined, I'm on a mission, so I'm gonna get it done anyway. So that's also, something that I'm incorporating in Yard Open. Because for me, when the yard is open, there's a fitness aspect to that. That's a part of my everyday life now. Because like after I stopped playing sports, I'm like, I gotta do something to maintain my health, because I don't know if I told y'all, I'm trying to live to 200, so you gotta stay physically active. So if you're not running up and down the basketball court, if you ain't mossing motherfuckers in the end zone and shit, gotta be doing something. So I'm out here doing my burpees, my pull-ups, my lunges, squats, I end up coming across one of my boys. We actually were at 3 different prisons together. So when I'm leaving Belglade. I leave Belglade in confinement. They transfer me, they're sending me north, so I get stuck in Orlando. It's like they lost my paperwork or something. So I got 60 days to do in the box. I'm just supposed to be in transit, really leaving Belglade. I was supposed to go back to Sumter, but I'm going, like I said, I get to Orlando. It's like they lost my paperwork or something. So, like, that's a story in itself. But, I end up, like, I'm there for like a month and a half. I'm like, I write classification. Like, no matter if it wasn't a month and a half, I was there for like a couple weeks. And I was like, hey, do y'all realize, that I'm even still here? No response for a little bit. My 60 days is up. So they let me out on the compound. So I'm just roaming around at it. This is a reception center, right? Like when you're in transit, this is reception centers for people who are just coming to prison, mostly. Or they're just going from one area, they stop there, they go into the next prison. That's it. So I'm not supposed to be here for months. So, but at the same time, by me being there in transit, I'm seeing people who I haven't seen in a while. Because, reception centers, it's transit people. A lot of people come, a lot of people go. So these are people who I might have known, from the streets. I might have known from like my first 10 years in prison, ain't seen in a while. I remember I seen Antonio Floyd when I was there, right? So, we called him Slim. So Slim was under 18, caught 2 life sentences for robbery. Nobody hurt, but they just wanted to give him 2 life sentences because they could. And the law changed, so he was getting his sentence overturned. But they gave him like 40 years apiece for each, which is still equivalent to a life sentence, 80 years. But he was on his way back to court then when I saw him, because the law changed. He's like, whether it been 2 life sentences or 80 years, it's equivalent. So they have to give him, something reasonable. But anyway, but back to the yard open. So I run into one of my buddies who I knew from Sumter. He was like, hey, let's get on these workouts. So we started working out together. And I guess classification realized they messed up. So they put me and him on the bus together. We end up at Hardy. Boom. We work out partners every day on the yard. So at Hardy, I didn't work at all. Every inmate is supposed to go to work every day. Well, not every day, like usually Monday through Friday. I didn't work at all. I work out and I go to the yard, get my hustle on, one way or the other, right? So with me and my boy, every day, rain, sunshine, it's 1,000 degrees out there, we're out there. So remember, he was working in the kitchen. So he would get these bags and shit, you know what I'm saying? Because they don't want you to have bags. Because people think, it's not people think. People gonna use it for stuff. Like a lot of times, if you can get a bag with no holes in it, they'll make buck, which is wine, which is alcohol. And I never learned how to do it, so I can't, just give you the breakdown of the recipe, but I know they get bags and they get a lot of stuff that, basically like it spoils it, it goes rotten and then shit, before you know it, they got that buck and they passing around. But anyway, so he gets the bags and we take them on the rec yard and we fill them up with dirt. So we get a couple belts, send those to laundry, pay them a few dollars, get those sold together. So now we got the dirt, we got the belt tied around the waist, boom, doing pull-ups. That's where this big back comes from. You know what I'm saying? Doing pull-ups with the dirt around the waist. Go to the dip bar, boom. Got about 60, 70 pounds worth of dirt. If it's raining outside, we got mud scooped in here, so the bag's even heavier. Got a broken broomstick, run it through the bag of dirt, doing curls with it, doing triceps with it, one hand shoulder press. So, and what's crazy, so me and him we were at Hardy main unit for a few years together. They send me to the work camp. Workout continues, I'm working out outside the gates. So, which is another thing, right? People always have these excuses. Oh, after work, I'm tired. In prison, when you working outside the fences, this shit is slave labor. You down in ditches. They give you a machete. They want you to mow down. This Florida, man, they got jungle out here. Here's a machete. Here's a weed eater. You guys need to mow down this jungle. Like I was working in Bradenton, we're in city parks, we're weed eating ponds, retention ponds, it's alligators, water moccasins. We're doing all this, right? Summertime in Florida, heat index, 99, 98, 100 degrees, out here nonstop for hours. As soon as we come back, boom, on the rec yard, pull-ups, dips. Over there, I had a couple guys who worked out. They had these big bags tied together with magazines and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Same thing. Pull-ups with the bag, dips with the bag. They were a little more inventive over it. Plus the it's solid, so you could do shoulder presses with it. We're doing handstand, shoulder presses, got it on your back, lunging across the field, lunging around the track. But the fact of the matter is that, I'm out here from before the sun up to not quite sundown, working hard, come back, still get the workout in. So yard is open. And I hope y'all got a little understanding of, my perspective and why I chose to use, the terms yard open.